All right, so I just got back home with the vehicle here coming from Mr. Tire in Dunkirk. And I filmed another video before this. And basically what happened is this lug nut right here, which is a locking lug nut, is what the lady over there at Mr. Tire told us seemed loose. They apparently go around and just, touch all the lug nuts with their fingers to make sure they're not loose before ever taking a tire off. She found out where the nail was. Supposedly she did this herself. She found out where the nail was on the tire, and they went to go remove the tire. So next thing you know, they're touching all the lug nuts to make sure they're on tight. Which never heard of a thing like that in my life. Never, especially a mechanic shop. They're in and out trying to make things happen quick. They throw an impact on shit, spin it, get the tire off. They're not there to take their time and work on little shit like that. They don't care if the lug nut's already loose. So end of the day, she comes out there to show us what's going on. She points at this lug nut, which was in a different position at that time. It was sitting more over here because the tire rotates, the wheel rotates when you're driving down the road, and now we're home. But once again, you'll see from the video I shot earlier, that's once all damaged up, that's the locking lug nut. No other lug nut on there has that pattern around the base of it, because those are not locking lug nuts, they're regular lug nuts. Conical shape at the bottom. This one is not. Well, it's going to have a conical shape at the bottom, but you see obviously again that pattern going around it. So go to point out to her after well, actually before she even came out, I went and looked at the locking lug nut, and I could see that there was actually wear on the locking lug nut. She tells us that they don't use impacts there, and impossible, absolutely impossible. And the hex portion of the locking lug nut, or the lug nut key rather, has damage from an impact. Now again, this vehicle came straight directly from the factory. It arrived at the dealership on a truck still. It hadn't even been into the dealership. They went ahead, pulled it off the truck, prepped it by just removing the plastics, giving it a quick wash, and the car has not been touched by anyone else. I've done oil changes on it so far. Car's had no maintenance on it because it's still a fairly new truck. It's a 2025 Suburban. And I know no one's had the wheels off because, again, we've had the car nowhere else to be serviced. I've never taken the wheels off. I've had no reason to when doing oil changes on it. But yet, somehow, here are several lug nuts, as I've shown in the previous video, that have wear marks on them. They've already been messed with. Although the lug nuts on the rest of the car that don't we didn't bring in for service for, magically they were never touched. So girl comes out and tells us, yeah, it was this one. It was spinning around. We were able to spin it with our fingers, so we didn't want to touch it. And you're gonna have to go ahead and get that fixed. It seems like it snapped the stud. Which, when she explained that, I said, look, if the stud was snapped, there's no way that thing would be hanging in there. She looked at me like I'm an idiot. Like, if the stud was snapped, nothing is holding that lug nut on there. She says, yeah, it was hanging on by the lug nut. No, impossible, because the only way for this to rotate freely right here, if it was a regular lug nut, would be to have snapped the stud, and therefore this thing wouldn't even be sitting in the car anymore, or inside the wheel, inside this, what do you want to call the barrel down here. So at the end of the day, there's no way possible that they didn't put a socket on this. Well, this is actually just cosmetic. So now I see that it is loose, it's spinning. But if you look at the rest of the pattern on the locking area, it's not moving. It's because this little cap right there is just cosmetic. You're not supposed to rotate it by that. You're supposed to rotate it with the outside pattern using the key that only touches the outside. It does not touch the hex pattern on that little, what looks to be a hex nut. So again, she'd argue with me that, hey, this thing doesn't even have a locking lug nut on it anywhere. She shows me my vehicle right next to it and says, look, you have no locking lug nuts. I had to go back and show her. This is a locking lug nut. I pulled out the key, showed her the key that fits that pattern. She was surprised. But here we are. We find out that they didn't know that it was a locking lug nut. So exactly what happened was they have clearly taken a tool of this and screwed it up. So now I'm going to finish proving that. We're going to, here's the corpus number she gave me. I'm going to take the lug nut key, the locking lug nut key, back out of this little package here. Now, mind you, this has never been used on this vehicle. When GM puts a vehicle together and assembles it to go out to the dealer, they don't use the key that they put inside your glove box for you to go ahead and, or for them to go ahead and fasten the wheel to the vehicle to lock down the lug nuts. They have their own tool of sort that's attached to a impact at all times. It's not this little thing right here that they then threw in the car and said, okay, we want to use this to put on the wheels on, here it is. Yet this one has impact marks, as you can see as I spin around. Clearly has been used. Again, no one else has touched this vehicle since then. We're gonna find out what size socket this is. And again, it just goes over that. Hollow in the middle, circular in the middle, because it doesn't bite onto this cosmetic piece here. So I just got my sockets out and a breaker bar. And let's see, this one is equivalent to 22. And sorry, I'm not gonna have the camera perfectly on the wheel at all times now that I'm kind of using two hands here. There's that. Notice I'm not using an impact. And that was definitely not torque to spec, so obviously they have used this key and they had gotten it off after that and realized what they did and threw it back together. So we're not gonna take blame on that. Let's put it back together and just say, hey, the thing was loose, you have a broken stud, you're gonna have to take it to a shop and then hope that we don't know any better and go from there. But you can see the damage. If I could back this thing up enough, look at all that damage to the hex nut, to the cosmetic portion. I'm sorry it's not staying focus here, but not a single other lug nut on the vehicle has any damage whatsoever like this one does. So they've done pride and done all kinds of shit, and there's your lug nut behind it. And I almost think I might see damage to that too, I can't tell. So I might have to take off some other lug nuts to see if they didn't strip off the first however many threads there, but it sure does look like that. Trying to get that in focus too. That's kind of hard. Yeah, this first several looks like threads are gone, but it might be like that from the factory. Let's try that with another lug nut. So we'll take a real lug nut off. That one was definitely tighter. They're also torqued the same spec, so I doubt GM just sent this vehicle out with the locking lug nut not torqued down just enough. I would say that was the Mr. Tire here that got it off and didn't put it back on tight. All right, so no, they did not strap threads because this one's the same way. But again, here is that locking lug nut that would have never been touched by anybody aside from when the manufacturer GM first put this vehicle together. And they're claiming that they did not touch it. And you can see the scoring inside of this wheel from a socket. Let me see if any other wheel has any of that, because I'm going to say it probably doesn't. Let's go to another wheel. Huh, look at that. No scoring from any socket. You can see inside that bore of each wheel, hey, locking lug nut. That doesn't exist on the car, according to the lady here at Mr. Tire. So, not only did they damage that little lug nut, which is not that big of a deal, however, you know, them lying about it is, but they've scratched up the wheel, they've screwed up other lug nuts. Look at all that scratching up in there on an aluminum wheel, and this is, you know, it's not a Escalade, it's a GMC, or not even a GMC, I'm sorry, this one's a Chevy Suburban High Country, so it's dirty wheel, but it's a nicer vehicle with nicer wheels from the factory, yet now they're all fucked up. So we'll be in touch with corporate and seeing what they're going to do to fix this.